Okay, so hello everyone. This is a conversation place, the second in a series of 3 as part of the Plurality of Abhinaya project in association with Dance 4. My name is Seetal and I'm the project coordinator. And this is Nilima Devi, who is a dancer, choreographer, and researcher as part of this R&D project. And we also have with us Rani Moorthy, who is an actress, playwright, and director of Rasa Theatre, if I'm right. So, if Nilima, do you just talk a little bit about what the project is about, Plurality of Abhinaya, and then we can get on to some ideas.
Plurality of Abhinaya looks at that there is not one way of expressing Abhinaya or expressions. There are different ways of expressing, and we are looking at it's an R&D project, research and development project, and I and another dancer, Anusha Subramaniam, we are working on presenting Naika as our theme as part of the Plurality of Abhinaya project. And we thought that why don't we do that? We work on our traditional aspects of presenting, but as well as looking at what are the contemporary ways of looking at presenting Abhinaya, how we can communicate with the audience, whether what we present, whether it is sort of, people are understanding it, whether it is appreciated or not. Because sometimes I think it happens that when you perform on the stage, I think you have to just take it what the art is present, But I think this research sort of trying to find out how we can use the two worlds medium in presenting any art form, So this is the project is all about, and it's sort of focusing more on Naika, on women qualities,
Yes.
And So, we have Ashtanaika in Indian classical dance. So we just did a first workshop with Jain Center, and it was very fascinating for them also to know that how in Indian dance all this sort of we bring this reality. It's again contemporary. Can you see the reality of women? Because women in the olden times, now nothing has changed. The qualities are still there. You find Kalhantarita who are all the time fighting with her husband, or who is something very dedicated to her husband, or somebody who is awaiting for her husband. So we have all these Naikas within us, and we all play that role silently or blindly. We do not know. But I think for these ladies, it was very educational to understand that. So what is happening that we are doing as part of R&D, we are creating work with 2 musicians, and then we are going to share it in Nottingham on the 11th of September. So Rani, in today's interview, I'm going to discuss with you how because you are an artist, you are an actor, and you do storytelling, through your artistic work. So it will be really good to know how you look at Abhinaya. Okay, expressions, yeah. So my first question would be that how do you? Oh my God! Can you see now? I forgot my glasses. So sorry, Rani, about that.
It's okay.
So how would you look at expressions of Abhinaya in a theatre context? Your experience.
Really interesting, because if you're looking at, because I think I need to sort of contextualize this in terms of my own biography, because if you think of theatre, then you're thinking of archetypes in Greek, because if you think of that classical Western theatre, which I'm also involved in, but because of my biography, the idea that I was born, I'm Sri Lankan Tamil, born in Kuala Lumpur in Malaysia, exposed to, in a way, a culture that has to, in a way, pay homage to Indian philosophy, Indian mythology. So even if you're looking at Wayang Kulit, which is the Malaysian shadow play, shadow theatre, if you're looking at Chinese opera, if you're looking at my first exposure at the age of, I think I was about 2, and it must have been somebody from Kalakshestra who first performed Bharatanatyam, and and it was a solo female performer. And I think that
You were 2 years old?
I was 2. And
Wow.
that had been the idea of one woman telling all these stories for 3 hours on stage, doing varnams. I didn't know the words
Yeah,
of what they were doing, but
Yeah.
I knew the power of a kind of expression that was to do with one female alone on stage talking to 1,000 people. And that was a very formative, and I think I didn't quite understand how.
You were only 2 and you are appreciating at the age of, I don't think I would even remember at the age of 2.
No, I remember it very clearly.
Very sharp.
Also because I was, but also because I think being, I was taller and bigger than most of my family and my friends. I was the darkest of my grandmother's grandchildren, and I was always told, well, your skin color will be this. Being female, being one of 2 daughters, father must save up for your dowry. All of these things that kept, in a way, informing a lot of my early years. The idea of seeing a woman alone on stage with musicians on the side playing Nattuvangam and performing and expressing herself, whether or not it was any of the Ashtanayakis that you're talking about, who
Must be from one night.
The expression, the stories that she was saying, obviously as a consort to a male or longing for a male. So the Abhinaya of Shringara Rasa, longing for God and a male version of, obviously, male God.
I love it. Yeah.
So I think those things must have impacted me on some area in my mind. So I come from that tradition of Javanese theatre, of using masks from Indonesia, Malaysia. The idea of there's not just one way of expressing, and also the words that come out of my mouth are English, but I also speak a whole lot of Asian languages like Chinese and Malay. So I think it kind of informs the kind of work that I eventually, the moment I realized I had a voice. And it's so ironic that I only found that out really properly when I came to live here. Because I think when you leave the place of your birth, that whole migrant journey, I think, makes you or kind of forces you to see what really was what is your essence, what is your rasa. And I think that's why I titled my company Rasa, because rasa, in terms of Indian theatre, in terms of the Natya Shastra, in terms of rasa also means feeling and emotion in Malay. It's in Tamil, it means essence of life in Tamil. And then in Sanskrit theatre, rasa is all the ways of expressing yourself.
Rasa is also aesthetic? I don't know.
Aesthetic, yes, exactly. So aesthetically, it's completely about who I am as a performer. So in terms of Abhinaya, I am completely, for me, Abhinaya is really about what rasa means, I think. It's your connection with the audience, and whatever it takes, whether it's with your vocal cords, with your expression, with ways of using your hands, the ways in which I sit down. I remember when I first did my first show here in the UK in 1999, and I squatted down. I was in that position where I'm squatting, and a lot of people commented on how easily I could squat. And I said, well, this is a very Asian way of expressing yourself. This is the way we naturally sit on the floor. We either sit with cross-legged or we actually squat. If you want to take it into a level of, this is the way I went to the toilet as a child.
Yeah, I was going to
so for us, that way of expressing something is so natural. It didn't even occur to me until somebody comments on it, that this is the way you are giving away a lot of paralanguage or meta-language, if you want to call it. So it's not just through the text, it's through all the physicality that I embody. So I think that I also I cannot leave out the fact that a lot of my work in Singapore, with the Singapore Indian Fine Arts Society, where I had the privilege of working with a lot of dancers, and that kind of cross I know now it's very fashionable, to have cross art forms, merging with each other. But I found it a real liberation to use very little text, but use much more of the dancer's energy. And it's interesting, I got very fascinated with Bharatanatyam because the way I stand, the way, Bharatanatyam, because of the way you use your hips and the way in which you have to be grounded and the way the body is, perfectly suits my, my larger frame.
Mm-hmm.
That if you had, just in terms of physical language, just in terms of what I do on stage, I was very aware that it made me stronger as a performer. It made me, it gave me that strength, that strength of character, that groundedness, even in how I use my voice, because you breathe differently if you stand like a Bharatanatyam dancer. So I learned this from my collaborators. So I was collaborating with people who have been trained as Bharatanatyam dancers and Kathak as well. So that connection to the ground, which is very difficult to find in Western theatre, because the training is completely about neck, especially in Britain. As an actor, you are trained with voice and neck up acting, but the rest of your body, in a way, it does whatever it does naturally. But I come from that background of working with dancers and with Tai Chi, warming up with Tai Chi, yoga, Qigong, where the energy and the Qi is very, very grounded and central. So all these things, part of my biography, the part of my background, informs the way I use Abhinaya, I think, the way I tell my stories.
Okay, that's very interesting. The use of the, I think, earth and grounded work. That is because normally of course, I don't think I will have to discuss this with Anusha, because we generally dancers, we look at it mainly Abhinaya through expressions, through facial expressions, hand gestures and body mind,
Anusha is Malaysian, isn't she? She's
Oh, no, Anusha, she's from South.
No, Subramaniam. I'm so sorry, Anusha. I'm getting the two Subramaniams mixed up. Sorry.
No, this is from Malaysia.
Yeah, but
Okay, Subhadra Subramaniam.
Yeah.
Suba is from Malaysia.
That's right. Sorry, I know Anusha very well. I don't know why I mistook. Anusha would completely get this as well. I'm sure,
Yeah, because I think also we use rhythm as well, no? While expressing between, we have got either we use some little compositions in Kathak, little toda, tukada, tihai, small, when we do expressions. Or in Bharatanatyam, they do jatis.
Yeah.
And then they stop it and then they again do Abhinaya.
Yeah.
So
I think that I find it with the rhythm of the text. And I also find it in terms of using various languages. So I switch. Sometimes I don't always play a character in English. I play it in Tamil, or in sometimes I've used Chinese as well when I can.
If you use that language, how people can understand?
So that's where Abhinaya comes in. Because I did a show called Curry Tales where I actually cook on stage, and I play a peasant, a kind of somebody who begs for the ingredients for her food, and I hide the food in the seats, under the seats, and so I actually step on people to get to where I need to be. So in a way, the Western way of seating an audience doesn't work for that character. So I had to find a way of breaking the fourth wall, getting into the audience and touching them and looking into their handbags. And it's very obvious that she is a powerful character. I wanted to reverse this whole idea because, in Asia, any part of Asia, if you watch somebody cooking, no matter how poor they are, they want to share the food with you. And I was in Besant Nagar in Chennai, and I was going to the small fishing communities and just looking at how they were cooking. It's part of my research for Curry Tales. And the thing that struck me immediately is this willingness to share their food, even though it's the only meal that they probably have. And they were making sambar, very simple sambar. And I wanted to use that energy of somebody who's cooking, not in a stove, on a stove. How do I recreate that moment on a Western stage where the set is a kitchen, it's a proper kitchen, and the stove is not, the wooden stove that this character would use? How would I get the right clay pot in which she was cooking? How would I then give that sense of how I felt as a almost like a Western onlooker, invading onto this person who in every way was going to have her last meal, but she wanted to share. So that inversal of, here I am, the rich person, giving you money. I could throw a few coins at you, but you have completely turned the tables round and you're sharing your food with me. I wanted to share that with the Western audience. So I had to use the dialect Tamil. I had to sit on my haunches, even though I was using an electric cooker to cook the sambar. I had to sit to give that sense that I am not Western. I am in energy and in complete physicality. I am from that world as much as I could. I would wear a shirt that was half undone, that gave me a kind, and a lungi, which again is an unusual thing in a Western context. So in every way, in physicality, in expression, and in invading the audience space, that is my expression of rasa. That is the way in which I enable them to understand quite complex things. Ultimately, I'm just cooking something that's going to be shared by our whole audience. I bring them up, I make them taste. So I'm putting some curry on there for them to taste something from my hand, to eat with their hands, to eat with their fingers. For me to put something into their mouths and feed them like a baby is completely contrary to the rules of Western theatre. So that's how I use that mode of that maybe doesn't come immediately from dance, but it comes from my observation of how one has to physically change and bring that world and introduce that world in a context that probably they don't. Now, it's interesting you mentioned the Pink Sari Revolution, because we were finding it really hard to get, because when you look at Sampat Pal, her energy and that whole physicality that comes from a particular village context that I know very well. But how do we get that? Using English, using the words that just cannot, be translated. It's just, So the way to do that is to just find a physicality that isn't from a powerful woman here, which may be about a suit and a jacket. Here is a woman in a sari, but she is completely in her world, the mistress of her destiny. So this is where I think there is a schism, there is a bit of a conflict between how do we bring a story that comes from a world that isn't from a Western context without it losing some of that, trying to keep the integrity of that and still be understandable and accessible to an audience that don't get that language or don't understand that word.
Now what we are also going to do, we are going to also use some of this language which in the workshop situation, when the women are expressing, how we can bring that in our movements, or how we can study those, and whether we can do that.
Yeah.
In our
I think it's easier, maybe not. Maybe it's my perception. It's easier in dance because in a way your grammar, your language is already, you don't depend on text. You don't have to tell the story through text. You find ways of telling that story through
speaking, no?
Do you use
speak? Do you use speech?
I have to use speech, yeah, because that's where I think there's a kind of conflict, and that's my struggle. That's even when I wrote a play about Rukmani Devi Arundel called Dancing Within Walls, because that's what it was. It was trying to find a way of expressing and bringing Bharatanatyam into respectability without without the Shringara Rasa, because Shringara Rasa was kind of reinterpreted and made very respectable, in inverted commas. And the Devadasi tradition had a very different way of expressing Shringara.
Mm.
And in the Devadasi tradition as well, the people who were their audience for that kind of Dasyata would have been very knowledgeable about the poetry and the whole idea of how you can express longing without it being highly sexualized and in the way of contemporary. How do you use contemporary language to express Shringara? How do you use English to express Shringara rasa? The word erotic doesn't connote Shringara, doesn't give the whole complex, complicated rasa that it is. And often in Bharatanatyam, I know the criticism is that they kind of whitewash it or bleach it from its original meaning. So I think that using English language to express philosophical concepts that come from a very specific tradition and thousands of years of evolution, it's very difficult. That is my struggle, because I find that the English language doesn't completely express it. And it's often...
You don't find that parallel world there.
Yeah, you can't find a parallel world. And it becomes either exoticized, which is very irritating, or it becomes a way of trying to explain it within the context of a very limited context of Western understanding of Indian philosophy and the role of women. So this is what I think is so a challenge for all of us, is the moment you step on stage as a woman, and I think that when you start to vocalize, as I do, I think it already creates a kind of
interaction,
something problematic, something challenging for the audience.
Okay.
People have said, a lot of, very famous actresses like Judi Dench in Western theatre have said that Shakespeare didn't write big roles for women. Like when you the moment you start to express yourself as a woman and express all your thoughts without a man, so you're not Lady Macbeth pushing Macbeth to realize his ambition and murder somebody. You are not Hamlet's mother trying to justify her marriage. So you're not playing an agent, an adjunct to a man. You are on your own and on your own merit. It is quite problematic, even till today, even in contemporary theatre. Because we think, oh, well, we're all feminists and we all have to, understand that. But I find, as a brown woman, standing alone on stage, will there be enough? Am I speaking to a mixed audience? Do people still ask me the question, is this only for women? Because, is it only for Asian women? Will Asian men and white men want to come and see your show? Will they buy a ticket to see your show because you're writing from a woman's point of view, as if that is completely separate from everything we experience in the world? After all, we are more than 50% of the world, so surely our point of view is what is already there in experience, in the context that we live in. And yet these questions are being asked. Do you only write for women? Do you only write? I find that very, very reductive and very limiting. And it isn't my intention. I am a woman, of course. I have my point of view. But at the same time, I like to think that whatever I'm expressing is equally interesting to both men and women and anyone in between.
Yeah. It depends, what kind of play you have written also.
Well, but everything I write, the intention, I don't think any writer, if you ask them, they don't have an idea of who their audience is in their mind. It is something that you want to express for everybody. You think that, well, if I wrote a play about dancing within walls, which is the whole idea that Rukmani Devi Arundel was faced with a lot of opposition during her time. She married this Englishman. Who himself was the one who really got her to look at the
to go back and look
the whole idea of theosophy, and what the theosophical side of her, how it informed her work, so she is a great woman. At the same time, I was writing her as a complex character, because the thing is that what is interesting to me is that there is also parts of her which is quite problematic nowadays, and what she did, what she had to do to bring Bharatanatyam to the stage,
the world stage, yeah.
So I think that I love this idea of the Ashtanayika, because I think it's good to see how challenging it is to find ways of extending the concept, so that it isn't,
I think for us it will be challenging in how we are going to express it in a contemporary context. Because we have learned in this tradition this style of expressing anyway.
That's right.
We can come across that, or how we can take that challenge.
And break away from maybe some of because as I understand it, the root of it comes from mythology. Does it come from mythology? So the idea of a woman longing for her husband, or waiting
for husband, yes.
Yeah. So I mean, so the whole in the Ramayana, or the Ramayana, I should say, how Sita, the portrayal of Sita, or the portrayal of Draupadi, in the Western world, we've tried to find different ways of different meanings and different representations of Draupadi, and especially Sita, who tested and tested and tested until the point that she had to say, that the last book of the Ramayana is always left out, isn't it? Because that's when she no longer is the ideal wife and breaks away from, that whole.
I think couldn't take that sort of Rama has separated her because of this laundrette man. This laundry man, his wife. They accuse her being with Ravana.
Yes.
Then to find out how she's about her chastity, about her purity.
Her purity and that test.
Yeah, and then so she was kept away from the palace, and she was staying with in her hermitage, with Rishi. So
and
I think then she realized that the time has come for her to depart.
Yeah. So the idea of the virtuous woman, the idea of this kind of virtue that you have to have, is something that I explore quite a lot in my work. This idea of virtue, it has been a very difficult. I was brought up Hindu, and my first work when I came here was a one-woman show called Puja, which again explored the idea of the horoscope and how the time of your birth dictates your destiny and the rest of your life, and almost every aspect of my life was so it's quite funny, because it's difficult to explain to people who see Rani as she is now, to try and figure out how did that young girl sort of grow up in that situation, that environment, because a lot of this is not actually in the public arena. You are in your own home, and we do Ganesha Puja, we're doing pujas to appease every kind of situation and context. If I did badly in an exam, well, it's because your stars are against you, so let's do these pujas and appease the stars. And, it's sort of those kind of, which I think is very particular maybe to the diaspora. Maybe in India it's not as, strictly adhered to, but maybe it is. I think that there was a need for me to express it in a way that that was funny, and allowed a lot of younger generation, second generation Hindus who grew up here to kind of examine their own lives, and it kind of gave me allowed me to examine what it is that we sometimes it's a concept in your head, and you go through it in a very unconscious way. So it's how you awaken that consciousness and decide what to do in your life, and what's the difference between dogma and faith. So these kinds of questions I examine quite a lot, and I think it challenges a lot of people. It's kind of controversial. So it's it's something that maybe you can find a solution to. I suppose.
Yes, that is our research. Let's see. Then the second question is.
Oh gosh, I've been talking away.
Means I think you gave a lot of answer. Your approach to expression as a storyteller, and I think you are saying that you try to bring that reality on the stage. When you are.
Yeah.
I think you said a lot about that. Like you were saying about this people how they cook on the street.
Yeah.
And you wanted to bring that in your.
When you put, because in a way sometimes in dance and in traditional dance, I find that because you are working within a context, the heroes and heroines are demigods or gods, and they are from a particular background who are put center stage. And so maybe one of the things that you only find in contemporary dance perhaps, and not in traditional dances, is the idea of exploring people and characters that don't normally get a mention in the traditional repertoire.
Okay.
So you have your, the heroine, longing for Krishna, and she's generally would be from a particular class of person. If you have a gopika, one of the gopis, again, I don't get the sense that the gopis are real, like a Sampat Pal character from a village. I get a sense that gopis are pretty elite, beautiful, clean, very dainty, yeah. So that there isn't a sense of it being very earthy and from the real world. So it'll be interesting if people can then challenge this idea of heroine in dance and in maybe other the kind of thing that possibly I can do in theatre, which is that I'm interested in a certain kind of character. Perhaps, when I looked at a play about skin color, and I made a mockery of a lot of Bollywood type or actresses I'd seen in films, because in a way you are attractive if you are fair-skinned and have a certain way of looking. And anyone who looked like me, you would probably be the clown or the friend of a friend of a friend. You're not going to be the heroine. And I think that although that as a 2-year-old I watched a dance performance and was very mesmerized by one woman on stage by herself, when I look at it now, it was almost like she was a goddess who had just landed in that little Malaysian theatre. I just would love to see somebody who isn't looking like a dancer on stage. So my most recent encounter is looking at, there's an Indonesian dance company called Sardono. And Sardono uses big-sized men. They were almost like sumo wrestlers in his choreography. And I saw this large man be so dainty and so light on his feet. And that for me was just a very powerful moment. And why don't we see that in dance, in South Asian dance? We see, beautiful looking men and women. I mean, Akash or Akram, they're all, just gorgeous. And all the girls look really slim and beautiful. And even older dancers, Vajanti Mala, I know, still dancing. And I think she's nearly 80 and she's still dancing. But, there's a certain energy, or Bishaka, Bishaka Sarkar, and you, I'm sure, sort of, I'd love to see what happens so that you don't try and be let's do the same moves. This is where Abhinaya comes in. You're no longer the physicality, no longer.
No, you can't do so much technical, you know.
Yeah, but the beauty of how you move when you are older. I want to see that. I would pay good money to see that. I want to see somebody who isn't that stereotype of what is supposed to be representing a heroine on stage. Another powerful. It was in Adi Shakti in Pondicherry, and I saw. I think she's called. Oh gosh, I can't remember her name now. She's from Kerala, and she was doing Nanya Kuttu, which is the solo Kathakali performance by a woman. I think she's called Nanya Ushana, something like that. But it's Nanya Kuttu that she was performing, and it was again Kathakali, but it wasn't the Kathakali that the men do. Nor is it the Kathakali character within a traditional Kathakali performance. It's Nanya Kuttu, which is, I think, a solo performance. I've never seen it since.
Oh yes, I have. I think I hearing for the first time. I thought always Kathakali performed by men.
Yes, and or you know,
female characters performed by men.
Yeah, but this is solo female performance, and it was the first time I'd seen it, and it was very, very powerful. Again, it wasn't the same as the Kathakali performance, which I love, but it was incredibly moving to me, because it was, again, the fire, her makeup was all very different. Her moves were more closer to the body, you know. And I found that very mesmerizing. So it's just ways of challenging those stereotypical and quite. I think, you know, this whole idea of body politics is very interesting to me. When you see a kind of statue-like female character, and I like to see how the gender roles change, how men play women and women play men. I know it happens in several dance forms, but, you know, it's just nice to see maybe a woman who is not so feminine looking doing something that stretches the whole boundaries. I think sometimes that whole area seems to be taken over by contemporary dance, and I think that really good traditional dancers can be very effective. You know what I mean? I don't know whether that makes sense.
Yeah, but that is what contemporary dance has said, that the dance is for everybody. It's not like classical ballet. You need to have this figure, and you need to have, you know, particular type of body and particular way of moving. Like in contemporary dance, you see all different sizes of dancers performing.
Yeah.
Anyway, my third question is, I think your experience of working with a dancer.
Yes.
And you as a storyteller, how did you use Abhinaya with that dancer? Have you ever worked with a dancer?
Yes, I've always worked. As far as I can. I work with as many dancers on any opportunities. So when I was in Singapore, that was one of the delights, is to find ways in which I could tell a story that involved that kind of movement and that kind of dialogue between an actor and a dancer. And so I used Ramanujan's poetry, the Sangam poetry, and we did a performance where I was very much the storyteller, but also the medium between the audience and the dancers. So the dancers were expressing themselves almost through me, and I would be the go-between between the dancers and using the poetry, of course. So it was a constant dialogue, and I found that performance really very interesting. It was based on a group of Ramanujan's poems called What She Said. So it's a conversation between two women talking to each other about their lover, about is he coming, is he, you know, all of those things. But also we wrote some pieces to counteract the poem. So if it was longing for somebody, it was to say, well, I don't care if he doesn't come today, I will just do it. So I used Singapore English. We call it Singlish. So never mind live, it doesn't come, who cares? So it was a very counterpointing, sorry, not contradicting. It counterpoints the poetry of Ramanujan. At the same time, it kind of has a kind of political statement about contemporary life and how one receives these kind of poems written by a man about women, and how do we, engage with that. So the second time I worked with dancers was I will always be asked to narrate a big dance drama. So I would work with, let's say, the Dhanajayans would come and they choreograph something with Singaporean dancers, and I would be asked to narrate. So there I will find a way, because you can stand there and read, which doesn't satisfy me as an actor. So I would find a way of incorporating characters within the. So not just doing the dialogue that was written for particular to kind of contextualize a particular dance sequence, but to actually play some of those characters and give a kind of life to some of those, male and female. So that was very interesting. When I came here, of course, I said I wrote a play about Rukmini Devi, and I was exploring again. Here was a way of looking at the Devadasi dance and Bharatanatyam and what came, and how a lot of Devadasis were attracted to the Bollywood of that time. And it was not called Bollywood, but films in the 30s and 40s. So there were dancers and singers who worked in film because they had to. That was the only way of earning a living. So I've set it in the context of Kalakshetra and so it was a very much a period piece, and it was very interesting. I worked with dancers here from Bharata Vidya Bhavan, and so they were Bharatanatyam dancers, and also Shobna Gulati, who is she has some training. I mean, she isn't completely a Bharatanatyam dancer, but she has some training with Chandralekha, and so she was really good. I mean, it wasn't that we had big sequences with Bharatanatyam. It was very much within a theatre piece. Whenever I can, I try and incorporate Abhinaya in my work. It may not be Abhinaya in the dance context, but in a way, I went and spent some time at Kalamandalam in Kerala, and I use some of the movements. I mean, obviously, it isn't. I borrow, and I say very clearly, I borrow from, and I also borrow from Kuthu, which is Kuthu, comes from street theatre, but there's a way of dancing and a way of presenting characters within that context. So whenever it is very much part of the storytelling. It's very much part of what I want to achieve at the end of it.
So when you work with a dancer, you as a storyteller, dancer is a dancer. How did the dancer use her abhinaya? Is it working in partnership with you, or sort of she's also doing her own way, and then
I think we had to find and in that particular way, I like to use a lot of humor. I was also directing part of it. So in a way, sometimes when there would be something that comes out of the poem, which is all about longing for, I'm waiting, and they're like two birds on the branch of a tree. So she will perform it very truthfully, right? So she is performing the truth of the lines. I'm counterpointing it with an expression that is completely about, oh, give me a break, for goodness sake, you may think like that, but I'm not. I'm your next door neighbor, and I'm listening to all your quarrels, I will write something that counteracts what was said. I think it's because a lot of times, because we grew up with traditional dancers who, and I'm talking across the board, even in Chinese opera, there is a particular way in which women are portrayed that I think as a performer and as somebody, my natural instinct is for for two things to happen. One is somebody has undermined the power of this woman, this character. Somebody has undermined it. It could be a male writer. It could be the woman herself who is wanting to be portrayed in that way as a frail victim rather than somebody empowered. So it's interesting because in a whole Varnam sometimes, or I don't know, you come from a Kathak background. Is yours?
I'm from Kathak background, yeah.
And I cannot imagine it, and because when I watch Kathak and I watch, women, solo women, or I'm always amazed at how powerful you are, because it's a very powerful way of presenting yourself. And yet I know that in the Mughal tradition, it's probably had a male gaze, like a lot of dance. It was men watching a woman dance. So there's something in that gaze that I want to challenge. So I'd either do it in my writing or I play a character that is totally the opposite of what is in the repertoire. Does that make sense? So I've always found a way of using it, but also using it for its beauty, but also saying, actually, let's investigate what's behind what this man is writing in this poem about this girl. This woman is probably, not. So I'm giving voice to some of those ideas, some of those thoughts that might be like one of my friends in Singapore, a Chinese poet. He wrote a poem called Sita's Lament. So as a man who is looking at Sita, sitting there being wooed by Ravana every night, and Ravana is a very famous lover, and she must have been tempted, and she must have thought, how did she keep virtuous? How did she do it? And he's questioning how this poet was questioning. So I used that in a dance. So I got a dancer to play Sita, but having these contradictory thoughts. So when I recite the poem, I'm already presenting two versions of Sita. Do you see what I mean? Or more than one version of Sita. So I think that text and dance can work very well in that way.
Yeah, but then can you see why she has to be attracted by Ravana? Because she's always in the thought of Rama. Can you see? Her lover is Rama.
Yeah. But when she was separated for 14 years, how, if I put myself
separated for 14 years?
Yeah.
My God.
In exile? They were in exile. It took him that long to get to her. So it was a long time, yeah.
I know, 14 years.
And he needed Hanuman and everyone. I mean, it took a long time to get to her. So it's
So within 2 years of their exile, she was, I don't think 14 years she was with Ravana.
No. Okay.
I
think it was quite at some time. It wasn't a few months. It was some time. So it took him a long time. Maybe I'm thinking of 14 years in exile.
No, 14 years of Rama's exile in a forest. Rama was sent for 14 years.
14 years.
But maybe
she was kidnapped and maybe it took some time. But it took some time. He had to travel far with Hanuman and get there.
No, must be.
It was a longish time. It wasn't a few days.
That's an interesting one. One needs to find out how long Sita stayed with her.
One needs to find this out.
Yes,
my imagination. It's a long time, and that.
So how did audience understand when you're counteracting what the dancer would say? Were they very responsive of it? This sort of thing, did they accept?
When you do it with, I think there's a way of doing it so that it doesn't contradict what was in the history. It's not contradicting that. It's just giving another point of view, and it's obvious that point of view is a contemporary point of view, a contemporary woman speculating on what her. As long as I'm not saying I am Sita and I'm thinking these things, I think it's interesting to contemplate so that. I mean, it's not. I mean, you can be offensive. In that particular case, I didn't want to offend my audience. Why should I? All I was saying was that this is my contemporary point of view, my feminist point of view of what I see written in these texts that often are written by men or been handed down by, and probably men who maybe come from a particular caste, Brahmin maybe, and therefore would want to see women in a particular way and want to see women, that whole idea of being the virtuous woman. I mean, what is that? How does one portray that in the modern context? Because within that time, there must have been pressures on women, and a lot of women must have rebelled, but we don't have stories about them because they're not named, or the only ones who are named are the queens or whatever. But there must have been, rebellion. There must have been, stories that are all lost, and it's not part of the repertoire because they are not. It doesn't serve, a particular group of people who have acquired this knowledge. So I know in Bharatanatyam, a lot of people are now going back and looking at the Devadasi tradition and looking at the dance in a new light. It's not something that is contemporary. It's something that was happening, a few decades ago. There were people who were starting to look at Bala Saraswati and Gauri, and these are the people who are Abhinaya, who are doing Abhinaya, teaching Abhinaya in the South. So it's so interesting to me that they are interested in looking at a tradition before the Brahmins took over, before the Victorian English was so worried about girls being sold to temples. So it's a very, very interesting topic to me. That's why I wrote the play about it.
Have you seen this just by sitting Abhinaya doing this great artist from South, Kalanidhi Narayan?
Kalanidhi, yeah. She's wonderful, yeah. I've only seen it on film.
Now I think she's too old. I don't think her health is not good.
Yeah.
But
70s and 80s apparently, and she was teaching.
Her eyes were so expressive,
Yeah, she was teaching Hema Malini. Hema Malini was taught by
Kalanidhi ji?
I think so. One of those.
Abhinaya, perhaps.
Abhinaya, yeah. So when I was looking for an actress for my show, people suggested Hema Malini, but obviously, I don't think she would have come to Manchester, to UK to do it. But I think that it is these are questions. These are questions that are very interesting for dancers, I think.
Great, Rani. Thanks talking to me and expressing your views on those questions. And it's really, you're doing a very interesting work. Perhaps we need to plan something to do it together in future.
Oh, that'd be great.
Let's see.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sometimes you.
Yeah.
There you are. I thought you'd gone to sleep.
I'm out of the frame because I'm going to edit it.
Got to edit it all, yeah.
Yeah, edit it all. But yeah, is that okay for you guys?
Great. Yes. Interesting. Very interesting.
So thank you.
It's going to help us.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rani, for your time. And nice talking to you. It's interesting.
Keep in touch as to what happens next. And
I hope, I don't know whether would you be able to come on the 11th September? It is Sunday in Nottingham.
We don't know the venue just yet, but we will definitely let you know. It'd be great if you could come.
Yeah.
It's going to be live music with Bharatanatyam and Kathak.
Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, we'll let you know.
Yes.
So will you both be performing?
Not me.
No,
I'm just coordinating.
Anusha and myself.
Oh, say hello to Anusha. Oh, she's lovely. And I'm sure I've seen you, but I don't know, you look familiar to me, but I haven't seen you dance, so it'd been lovely to see you.
No, I haven't been dancing for the past so many years now
because
of my knee problem and all that, but now I want to get back, but I don't know how far technically I can do the way I used to dance. I don't think my legs will allow, my knees, because I was dancing with Anusha last week.
Oh.
Yes, and I think my knees were telling me not to do so much
Yeah,
art technical, you know.
yeah,
So I'll have to find a way to dance now,
yeah.
definitely.
In a different way, in a different.
Yeah, I mean, so I was dancing this Abhinaya piece at the Jain Center, and there was technical stuff which was not so powerful. So that was helping my knees, you know, and I could do it very easily.
Right.
But when it is solid, fast speed, and all that, too many chakras and all that, I don't think.
Right.
And using both side chakras, that only Akash can do it because I taught him.
You taught Akash.
Yes, Akash is my baby.
Oh, he's so lovely. He talks about you all the time. You're the Nilima he talks about.
Yeah.
He talks about you all the time.
Mm.
He's very funny. He's
Yes, because he started since the age of 7, and he came for an audition when my
such a beautiful
son was 9 year old, and I asked him to play tabla to my son, and then I was auditioning.
Oh my gosh! So you're his guru.
Mm.
Yeah.
So he
Go.
danced with my boys, my sons. My sons were also dancers,
Who is
and
this?
they were both dancers and musicians. But they realized mommy is not earning enough, or mommy is not
Where do
making
they
money.
dance? Are they here in this country?
Yeah, yeah, no, they are now. They have become lawyers. So one is in America, one is in Japan.
Oh my gosh,
Yes.
that's amazing. And are they pursuing dance as well?
No, 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 no. Now, as a lawyer, they're so busy.
I know, as a lawyer, there's no time.
But they go to see performances. But they go to see performances.
Yeah.
They take part in my project. They ask me a lot of questions. If I ask for money, they ask, why you need money?
Oh well.
But
Anyway,
it's interesting. I think it has given them a sort of an insight into Indian culture, different way. And
which part of India are you from?
I'm Maharashtrian.
Maharashtra. Yeah.
So I come from near Pune.
Wonderful.
But I was born and brought up in Gujarat. So my
Oh.
second mother tongue is Gujarati.
Right. Okay, that's fantastic.
Yeah, so I got a lot of Gujarati cultural influence in me.
Yeah.
But still, I think I feel that I'm still different from Gujaratis.
Yes.
I love my Gujarati and I love Gujarati people.
So you speak Marathi?
Marathi.
Yeah. Because Maharashtrian theatre is very good.
Yes.
I've seen it.
And there is a one Ekanki theatre, Natya Sangeet type theatre. They sing and they act and
Yeah.
very good.
And I have so many friends who are part of, and I'm trying to remember. I've got their cards, but you lose touch. But I went, like Orissa. There's another theatre company there. I mean, theatre in India is just wonderful. I mean, not the English language theatre. I mean, English language is fine, but the languages, all the different language theatres, they're fantastic.
Yeah. But Rani, you know that in the past, dance was part of drama.
Yes.
Yes. Later on, it became separate and became regional dance styles and all that. But that was interesting. I would like to, I was talking to Anusha that I think we need to bring more sort of theatre work in our dance, like speaking and dancing.
I did something with Shobna Jade thing for the Royal Opera House a few years ago. Worked with Anko, I don't know if you know Anko Bal, and her group Kamala Devan and
yes, Kamala Devan.
Yeah. And it's in contemporary dance, and dance is hard because unless you're really physically able to do it, because you need to have breath for speech. So how do you do both is the key. Whether you work with actors or whether you get dancers to, it's like getting actors to perform dance as well. I mean, we are, however physical you are, you still have to use your voice and breath.
Exactly. Yeah.
And to have enough breath to do a piece, a text is a challenge. As those dancers found, even though they're so physically able, you have to stop, catch your breath, do a few lines, and then carry on, or rest, between, you know, secret
Yeah.
and, you know, take your breath, because it's hard to do both.
Yeah, but then how did they do in the past? Can you see dance, drama, music?
I think they actually did that. They actually, the musicians take over. I mean, in Kutu, that's what they do. The musicians take over. They sing, and the dancers are performing. And then when they stop, they take a rest. Music continues. Somebody sings, and then they speak. So I think it's a technique. It's a way of finding a new language. But you can't do both effectively while doing the dance. It's really hard.
You know, what about these operas in this country, you know, where they sing and then they do acting, and it's a
Yeah,
really
but they don't act. They don't do anything except sing. They
don't
rarely move. They rarely move around. So if you watch them, everybody else is dancing, but they are pretty much, because you need the breath, you need the energy to
exactly.
sing. Otherwise, you to do both. I mean, I have not even seen in traditional theatre. I mean, the folk theatre, and again, you know, there are only certain actors who will be doing the singing and dancing. Others will be doing the pure acting. It's a way of doing both, and I think that is all to do with the direction.
Maybe in our contemporary piece we can bring in some speech. Yeah, let's see.
I don't think it's a problem in terms of even a traditional piece. It's just how to do it, and who, and whether there's some dancers who can't act. They can't, because the moment you're asked to speak, you are revealing something about yourself. In contemporary dance, as Shobna said, they don't think about the face. It's everything below. So
With the body, all the time, the whole body is working.
whereas my theatre is all about that too. You know, it's about communicating something to the audience. So it's a very, very tricky thing.
Maybe combine two. You know, have a balance.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah. There are ways of doing it.
Excellent. Yes.
Okay. Lovely to speak to you.
Me too. Me
Thank
too.
you so much.
Bye.
We'll be in touch and let you know
Good night.
when it goes.
Bye-bye.
Oh.
We'll speak soon. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you, Rani.
Take care. Bye-bye. I don't know where to go now. Okay.
Yeah,
Bye.
I'm just gonna stop it. Bye.
Bye.